Okay. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for joining us today for our third episode of our I Love Veterinary Podcast.
Thanks for having
Uh,
me.
I I will give you the word in just a bit. I just want to say a couple of things about our project and about our podcast. So if anyone doesn't know about I Love Veterinary, it's been a project running already for 5 years. We try to do as much as we can for the veterinary community. We have a store for veterinary gifts and a blog for veterinary professionals and pet owners. And yeah, as Vet Tech Week is coming, I think a lot of people will get presents from our store, which I'm really happy about because we have the best gifts. And just being humble here, of course. And so as I said, thank you for joining us today, and I am really excited about chatting with you. So if you can please introduce yourself to our audience and the people who are watching live, that would be perfect.
So my name is Justine. I am a veterinarian working as a self employed small animal or companion animal veterinarian in Ontario, Canada. It's just a bit about me.
Yeah, sounds exciting. I have a lot of questions about how you ended up working as a self-employed vet. But first, can you tell us a bit about where did you study and how it was? If you can recommend your university to future students.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Canada, you do a 3 to 4 year university degree, usually in sciences, and then you can apply to veterinary school.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a couple of vet schools in Canada, and they're pretty specific to which ones you can go to based on where you live. So I did my undergrad actually at two different universities. I started at University of British Columbia in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I would say for any non-Canadians out there, or even Canadians, if you're going to visit anywhere in Canada, British Columbia, go there. It's the most beautiful place ever. So I did my first 2 years there, and it was really expensive living out there. So I ended up moving back to Ontario. That was where I was born, and I did the last 2 years of my undergraduate year at the University of Guelph, Ontario. University of Guelph is where the Ontario Veterinary College is located. Being an Ontario resident, that's the only school I'm allowed to go to. So,
Mm-hmm.
other than leaving the country, or you have to gain residency in one of the other provinces first to go to a different one.
Mm-hmm.
So, I went to the Ontario Veterinary College, and that is a 4 year degree to get your doctorate of veterinary medicine. So
Okay.
Ontario Veterinary College is also known as the OVC. So I'll
Okay.
probably refer to it as the OVC going forward because Ontario Veterinary College is a mouthful.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I just want to mention for everyone who is watching that at the end we will have some time for questions, for answering questions from Dr. Justine Forbes. If anyone has a questions, they can post it in the comments on the platforms they're watching, either Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. So yeah, just so everyone knows. Let's hear it. Why did you decide to go for self-employment?
So a couple of reasons. So I started out working as an employed vet, but I actually started out doing a little bit of locum work right after I graduated at an emergency clinic as well. And
Mm-hmm.
the only reason that I did that is when I first graduated, there weren't as many jobs, weirdly enough. I mean, it's such a crisis right now. But when I
Mm-hmm.
first graduated 4 years ago, there weren't as many jobs. So I could only find part time work. So I already kind of started out right away doing locum work without even really thinking about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
I became fully employed. And for the first 2.5 years, I was a full on employee and I didn't really think about locum work. I started locuming or doing relief work because
Mhm.
actually I had some of my classmates that I had graduated with do it. And just hearing them talk about the freedom that it gave them and the flexibility it provided them, they spoke so positively and so highly of it. And one of my really good friends worked as a locum vet before. She basically convinced me that it was right for me
Mhm.
too. So that she was definitely the big factor in my decision to do locum work. I had quite a few classmates actually that did locum work before I did, and they convinced me that it was right for me. So I made the switch.
Yeah, sounds interesting. Yeah. Have you ever worked in a like a clinical veterinarian in one clinic only, or
Yeah,
uh, yeah?
yeah, yeah. So my first job as an employee, my first full time job, I was a clinical veterinarian there full
Mhm.
time as an
Mhm.
employee. And I worked there for about 2 years. And then I actually switched to emergency and worked there as kind of an employee. It was like a contract worker, I guess you could say, um,
Mhm.
for about 8 months before I became a locum. So my first
Okay.
3 years were more or less an employed clinical or associate vet.
If you could compare it, like, what do you prefer more? Like working as a locum or full
Mhm.
time?
I definitely prefer working as a locum.
Mm-hmm.
It suits me perfectly. It's not perfect for everyone, I would say, but there's certain aspects of it that are really appealing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I definitely 100%, I don't think I'll ever become an employee ever again. This is my forever. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely relief work over employee for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it gives you more freedom and more flexibility to me.
Definitely. Yeah, a lot more control.
Yeah. And do you also go to other countries, or you just work in Canada as locum?
As of right now, just in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely interested in exploring other avenues. I
Mm-hmm.
have, I'm a pretty big homebody.
Mm-hmm.
You and I were chatting before about working from home, sounding like the dream.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a pretty big homebody, but I do like to explore. So I'm interested in branching out for sure. Maybe not so much. I'm not so much thinking work, but volunteer work appeals to me big time. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm still a relatively recent graduate, being 4 years out. So financially speaking, I mean, is anybody ever financially secure anymore? Probably not.
Yeah.
But being a bit more financially secure, eventually I would like to take some time to volunteer abroad with veterinary services. So that's more what I'd be
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I can only imagine. Like when I was studying, I always imagined that I would go and work with giraffes and
Yeah.
volunteer in places like that with exotic animals. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
probably still do it as a volunteer eventually.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, now that things are becoming a bit more safe to travel, it would
Mm-hmm.
definitely be something to look into with
Yeah,
now
exactly.
that the pandemic is getting a little less of a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And things are coming down. At least in Europe, they're coming down.
Yeah, yeah. Here too as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are following you on Instagram and TikTok, and we like your videos that you post. So you're posting about vet apps, like reviewing vet apps. Can you tell us
Mhm.
more about that? How did that come to be? Like, why did you decide to
Yes.
do that?
Yes, yes. I am a millennial. We love our apps.
Mm-hmm.
I do find that a big problem nowadays is mentorship and finding
Mm-hmm.
mentorship, and graduating from veterinary school does not always prepare you very much for everything that you're going to face out in the veterinary
Mm-hmm.
world. And a lot of times it's hard to find reliable, consistent mentorship or somebody that can always be there for you. But it's not very often that you're, depending on where you are located, obviously, but here specifically, it's very rare that you'll be without Wi-Fi. So
Mm-hmm.
you have a little pocket mentor. So yes, I love apps. When I first graduated, I pretty much went right out into emergency, as I mentioned. And I was alone as a new grad. I was working overnights, no other vet was there. People say they'll be available by phone, but they're not at 3 in
Mm-hmm.
the morning.
Yeah.
So there were times where I didn't know how to do something and I had to rely on, and in the past, all you'd have were textbooks. And it can be stressful trying to flip through textbooks. So a lot of
Yeah.
these apps I actually discovered through just needing something quick to help me out. And then I became interested in these apps. They're really helpful to me. So I just went through on basically the Apple Store and downloaded all the possible apps I could find to help me as a veterinarian. And yeah, so now I've picked out quite a few that I still use 4 years out. I still use them all the time. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it really helps for sure in a clinical setting. Yeah, it
big
must
time.
help to have the option to search through an app instead of a textbook. Like the
Hmm.
search bar works better than than a textbook.
Exactly. I'll still have some colleagues of mine will get the big textbook and they throw
Yeah,
it down and they're flipping through and I'm like, "Here, let me search for you real quick." And I just do
yeah.
do 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 do, and I'm like, "There you go." And they're like, "Ah." So, the Plums app is a big one. Getting those drug doses, that's a great
Hmm.
one.
Can you tell us what are your top apps that you use and why you
Yeah.
use them? Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I have a couple favorites.
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to show people if I can here.
Okay.
So one of my absolute favorites for emergency is the Kimba app. I don't know if everybody can see that there. This one is great because it actually has walkthroughs on how to do a lot of neat things. So, for example, transfusions. So, doing transfusions, how to do the
Mm-hmm.
calculations and everything, picking your blood
Wow.
product, all super helpful for emergency. And then procedures. So, here you can see all the different procedures that you can do, pericardial centesis, thoracocentesis, all of that sort of
Mm-hmm.
stuff that's gonna come in the middle of the night when there's no one there to help you.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that is definitely one of my big time favorites for emergency work, but for anyone really. For the new graduate, First Line. First Line is an amazing app if it ever decides to load. The Ontario Veterinary College, so the OVC, if you can see there at the top, you can
Mm-hmm.
actually access it for free and it will go through antibiotic guidelines. So, antibiotic
Wow.
choices for different microorganisms, where they are, what body system, doses,
Mm-hmm.
timelines, all that sort of stuff that when you first graduate, you realize that school did not teach you. So, you're
Yeah.
going, I have a prostate infection. What is the best antibiotic to pick for that? And
Mm-hmm.
this app can help you. So, big one. And
Perfect.
then my third favorite app is Vet Pocket. So, Vet Pocket is amazing for doing math for you. I don't know if a
Mm-hmm.
lot of veterinarians out there love math, but not very many people do. So, this app will do your math for you for fluid
Mm-hmm.
rates, as well
Yeah.
as it's very bright. Sorry, I don't think you could see it very well. Um, but it will do fluid rate calculations, drip rate calculations, resting energy requirements, constant rate infusions. It's an amazing app, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of the night, again, when your brain's not working very well and your fluid pump breaks, and all of a sudden you have to calculate a drip rate. That app
Yeah,
will help you.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yes. Those are definitely my favorites. There's more, but those are my favorites for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this all sound great to me. Like I think anyone would benefit from using those.
Mhm.
Um, Yeah, so what's your opinion? Like, as you said, you're a millennial and you lived in the digital world uh, most of the time, even while studying. But
Mhm.
can you compare, like, how did the digitalization change the veterinary medicine, like, for better or for worse?
Yes, I definitely think there's a lot of pros about the
Mm-hmm.
digital world changing veterinary medicine. I love the connection that it's given us.
Mm-hmm.
I also am part of a lot of groups online, particularly
Mm-hmm.
Facebook. Facebook has a lot of veterinary groups where you can actually bounce cases off one another and
Yeah.
get a lot of, especially again, if you're working in the middle of the night, you can guarantee that somebody in the world is, awake. I mean, we can always rely on people from Australia being there for us in
Yeah.
the middle of our night. So you can reach out, and vets around the world can help each other with cases. And that's really, really neat to me. It definitely has allowed, I feel like in the past, really the only time you would connect with your colleagues would be at conferences. And
Mm-hmm.
now you can connect anytime, any day, any time of the day, any time of the year with colleagues around the world. So that definitely is a huge pro.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest con would be obviously cyberbullying, which is
Mm-hmm.
always going to be a big problem. So I think that aspect, I mean, we've all had the bad reviews that really cause a lot of stress, clickbait and articles, defamation, all of that is a problem. But there's a lot of pros
Mm-hmm.
about the digital world as well, including connecting with your colleagues around the world. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, I've been getting this into conversations lately, like in general, like the digital world, either whether it is a pro or a con in daily life. Like, do you
Mhm.
think that veterinarians or veterinary professionals would depend? Will end up depending on apps or stuff like that instead of let's say calculating by themselves. Do you think in the past it was different, or if you can do it faster now with the app, will it help the animal faster and better instead?
I do think so. I have noticed myself there have been a lot of defaults that
Mm-hmm.
veterinarians have gone to, because we're busy, because we're overwhelmed, because we're exhausted. Especially working in emergency medicine, you would see a lot of times pets are put on, if they're dehydrated, they're just put on 2 times maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have a dehydrated pet, they're put on 2 times maintenance. That's kind of the go-to. And you ask yourself, is it because veterinarians don't have time to calculate fluid resuscitation rate, and
Mm-hmm.
calculate based on percent dehydration as we're trained in school? Do they just don't have time? Are they overwhelmed? Do they not know how? If you simply just have an app on your phone, you can just enter that. It takes 2 seconds. You
Yeah.
can just go, this pet is approximately 8% dehydrated. You enter it in, you enter their ID body weight, and boom, you have your number. It even divides it by the 24 hours or 12
Mm-hmm.
hours or whatever you want your timeline to be. It does it all for you. It takes 2 seconds. Same with
Mm-hmm.
feeding. A lot of times pets are in hospital and no one is calculating how much food these pets should be getting. We're just blindly
Yeah.
feeding them. And a lot of vets probably don't remember how to calculate resting energy requirements. Well, boom, you
Mm-hmm.
just enter the pet's weight into the system and it does it for you. And so you don't have to sit down and be like, oh God, how do I do that calculation again? It just does it for you. And so I think that we definitely are probably underutilizing these apps that can actually make our
Mm-hmm.
job a lot better. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure there's probably some veterinarians that'll go, well, no, we shouldn't rely on these. But at the same time, if they're going to improve your practice and if they're going to improve your quality of medicine, then definitely use them. We shouldn't
Yeah.
be ashamed that we are like, I don't remember how to do it. I should remember this. You've already got enough to remember. Just
Exactly. Yeah.
utilize what you have. So I think they definitely can make the standard of medicine better, for our patients.
Yeah. Uh, to be honest, I think so as well. Like, they should be tools that you use daily. Like, you use the bandage scissors in a clinical setting. Like, you
Absolutely.
should be able to use the apps or any other software that can help the animal faster and better. Yeah,
Mhm.
that should be used for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, um, uh, since you're a busy vet and working different times and different places, what do you do in your free time if you have any? Like, give us ideas.
Shameless plug for self-employment. I have a lot of free time. I get to enjoy a lot of my hobbies, and that's a choice. Again, like if you're self-employed, you can pack your schedule. Obviously, it depends on your location, but I would probably guess that most places in the world are having understaffing issues. So I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
guess that there's a lot of demand in most places in the world. So you can have that flexibility to either work as much or as little as you want.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have chosen for my mental health, I find what works best for me that I can make enough money to be comfortable. Now I live very modestly. I have a little house.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to live within my means so I can work less. And so I do have a pretty good amount of spare time. I try not to work on weekends. I try to have my Saturdays and Sundays for family time. And so I can enjoy hobbies. Now, my hobbies are probably pretty lame. I love running. I'm a huge runner. You'll know
Mm-hmm.
anybody who follows me knows that I recently ran my first half marathon, so I was pretty excited about
Amazing.
that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And next year I plan on doing my first full marathon, so that's
Mm-hmm.
my new kind of thing. So running and exercise are big to me, so I do a lot of exercise. Otherwise, good for you. You said you live on a mountain ski resort.
Mm-hmm.
I love to
Yes.
snowboard. Every year, my husband and I try to do a trip somewhere to go snowboarding. So we don't have one planned actually for this year. So now I'm
You're
thinking about
welcome.
it. Yeah, now I'm thinking about it. Oh, I have to plan a trip. And so yeah, that's a big winter thing.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I love to garden. I'm not very good at it. My plants die, but I try. And then I have two dogs that we love
Mm-hmm.
to go hiking. So
Mm-hmm.
lots of hiking. So yeah, that's nothing too exciting, but those are my things.
Yeah, I mean, if they make you happy and fill up your free time and you love doing them, they're good hobbies. And
Yes,
yeah,
I'm a
yeah.
big I love boundaries. I love free time and taking advantage of your life to do whatever you want, even if that's nothing. Like even if your favorite thing to do is to do absolutely nothing all day and just veg,
Mm-hmm.
then do that. That's a hobby. Whatever
Yeah,
makes you
sometimes,
happy.
exactly. Sometimes you need that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so let me see if we have any questions. Yeah, can you read?
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, good question. I get asked that second one a lot.
okay. So,
Yeah.
what do you think?
So, if I'm interpreting, what perspectives of being a locum vet do you see? Perspectives, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Good question. I am notorious for not looking to the future. So for me, I plan on kind of just doing the same thing. So I do like to mix things up. Me personally, I like change.
Mm-hmm.
I like to try to find new clinics and explore and mix things up. So I more than likely will continue doing what I'm doing long term, which is working at various clinics based on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So they email me, they ask for certain contracts. I say yes or no, depending on what I want, and go to different clinics all the time. I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably do that for eternity, depending on how well I save for retirement, which is probably not going to be good enough with inflation, but whatever. Yeah, I do kind of want to look more into telemedicine. Again, we were
Oh,
talking about working from home. So I
yes.
know that there's a lot of neat telemedicine services that are popping up. So that's one thing
Mm-hmm.
that I am interested in looking into. So I'll post on my Instagram if I ever end up doing that. Now, for the second part of the question, would you like to become an employer and run your own clinic in the future? Um, Probably. I see what employers go through from various clinics, and it takes a very strong, special person to run a vet clinic. And I don't think I could ever handle that kind of stress
Mm-hmm.
and responsibility. These people are absolute champs. It is very hard. It's very hard to do. And as I mentioned, I love my free time. I love leaving work and life separate. Like when I leave work, I'm done. I can't
Mm-hmm.
fathom the idea of being constantly having to be available or on for my business, for
Yeah.
my employees. I don't think I could ever do right by them. So personally, no, I probably won't ever run my own clinic. But
Mm-hmm.
I definitely have a lot of respect for clinic owners. I think they have the hardest job for sure in the clinic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a hard job to run your own business. People don't see it that way. They think it's everything is smooth, but
Hmm.
the owners don't work or the managers don't work. But at the same time, the business owners or the managers work all the time. Like even
All
when
the
they're
time.
not on the clock. Yeah, as you said, even when you
Yep,
come home, you're thinking about it. You're resolving issues in your head, and yeah, it
exactly.
can be quite exhausting, and not everyone is up for it for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so lastly, if you can tell us where people can find you, like on social media, like your
Yes.
Instagram, TikTok.
Yes, yes. So I actually started on TikTok before
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Now I neglect my TikTok. It's under the same name. All one word, the Vet Soapbox.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's both the TikTok and the Instagram. I do have a
Okay.
secondary Instagram account called Yin Yang Dogs. A lot of people mess up
Mm-hmm.
and go yin yang. It's yin yang dogs.
Yes.
And dogs is spelled DAWGS. Yin Yang
Okay.
Dogs is my dogs account for pet education, pet owner education.
Mm-hmm.
So some pre-vets or vet kind of associated people might want to follow that account because I do make some posts on just general pet ownership and diseases and
Mm-hmm.
things to kind of get your feet wet in with regards to pet
Mm-hmm.
ownership. And then the vet soapbox is more towards people working in the vet industry. So, very much so focused on setting boundaries, mental health, sometimes just kind of joking around. It's a very light and positive account typically. So, it's fun for vet professionals.
Yeah,
That's where you
yeah.
can find
So the
me.
name is interesting. I was asking about the name earlier before we started live. Can you tell us more about how you came with the name The Vet Soapbox and what does it actually mean? Because I find it as an interesting story.
Yes, yes. So it's kind of a two-parter. So I came up with the name The Vet Soapbox actually because when I first started my Instagram account, I was actually in a really bad place mentally. And I was really bitter about the veterinary profession. I had a lot of negative views towards the vet profession. I actually used to call it a garbage profession. And I would joke all the time about how I would rather be a garbage man. And so I, at the time, was leaving a really toxic job. And I was like, I'm going to start up a social media account to rip on veterinary medicine and try to show the
Mm-hmm.
truth of veterinary medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with the vet soapbox because it was kind of like, so the saying is to get up on your soapbox, and that's to kind of like lecture people. When you get
Mm-hmm.
up on a soapbox, it's to stand above everybody and blah about whatever.
Yeah.
So that was kind of what I wanted to do, is get up on a soapbox and tell the world how terrible veterinary medicine was. Um, I realized that was a bad idea, partially through communicating with some other accounts that were very popular and very well known and helping one another with social media. They were like, don't do that. It's gonna just make your mental health worse. It's just gonna perpetuate the same
Mm-hmm.
negative feelings. So I ended up actually using the account as my mental health improved. So I am big on transparency in mental health. So I did seek out therapy, life coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and antidepressants. And the combination of putting myself first and getting therapy and using pharmaceuticals, I was able to get into a much better place mentally
Mm-hmm.
and start to use my account to advertise and help others and educate others on setting boundaries. And then also just finding the positives in veterinary medicine by putting yourself first, and
Yeah.
saying no. And yeah, big time setting boundaries. So yeah, that was
Mm-hmm.
the main reason. Now, the side reason is also I thought it was a hilarious play on words because, and again, I mentioned to you, I'm not sure how worldwide this is, but at least in North America, um, in your medical record, SOAP is an acronym. And so SOAP, and it stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, and Plan. So when you're writing
Mm-hmm.
your medical record, the SOAP is part of the that. So I thought it was witty. I hope other
Yeah.
people also noticed that, but they probably didn't. It was silly.
Yeah, I guess you need to have written like medical records or like know that acronym, because I actually, to be honest, I didn't know it, but it sounds
Okay.
very witty now that now that
Yeah.
I know.
I have had
Yeah.
one follower point it out, so I was like, "Oh, somebody
Oh.
noticed."
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we don't have any questions from our audience at this time. I think we can wrap it up right about here. Thank you again for joining us today. I learned a lot of interesting things from you about locum work and the apps that people should use in veterinary clinics. Yeah, if you want to say anything else, an advice for future veterinarians or for your colleagues, anything, you're welcome.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if anybody has any questions, like you're more than welcome to DM me on my accounts. I'm usually pretty available. My
Mm-hmm.
phone is glitching right now, so I might not be able to type back. But yeah, you can always, anybody can DM me if they have questions. And that's not just veterinarians, like vet assistants, CSRs, vet
Mm-hmm.
reception, like anybody can DM me if they ever want to talk or just vent, or have questions about self-employment and locum work. Like, yeah, I'll be available. So yeah, but thank you so
Yes.
much for having me. This was really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Of course, you're very welcome, and probably we'll see each other again in some next episode. I bet you will have some interesting stories to tell.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah, so I think we can finish here, and thanks everyone for watching. We will also have this video on YouTube and available on Facebook as well. If anyone didn't manage to catch us live, they will be able. Yeah, so bye bye everyone, and we see each other next Saturday for another guest. Bye bye.
Bye.